So I have always been a planner, an organizer, and I've joked my whole adult life that I live and die by my spreadsheets and my to-do lists and my organizers. So what that means for my life is I like things to be well planned. I like to know ahead of time what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how it's going to happen. So waiting for me is a really, really difficult thing. So there's an area of my life that I knew I needed some change in. It was something that I had felt God drawing me to and pulling me to for years. Being able to speak, being able to engage with others and share information and share my heart has always been something, as long as I can remember. I've always just kind of found myself speaking and teaching, or in the 8th grade, I was tutoring other students on instruments that I had just picked up and learned myself, and I was teaching them. Their parents were bringing them into my house and paying me to teach their kids to learn. And when I think about all these years, I found myself going in a career path that I loved. I was really successful in it. I had a really strong network of people around me in that career, but I didn't have any outlet for speaking or for teaching in that role. And as time went by, I began to just feel like there was a piece of me that was sitting on a shelf somewhere, that for whatever reason God had overlooked me, that every time I thought there was going to be an opportunity for me to step into a new role or a new position, or have an opportunity to share and to teach and to speak, something would come up that it would change that, and I didn't get that opportunity. And when you start thinking about the things that God's called you to, you start feeling those things in your heart. You start feeling that you have an idea of something that God's called you to, and then you don't seem to see any way to use that. For me, it became really frustrating. And I had to learn how to wait on God. So I spent 20 years thinking that one day I was going to be a full-time pastor in full-time ministry. 20 years. So in that season of waiting, it got really easy for me to start doubting, had I really heard God? Do I really have what I need? Maybe it's my fault. Maybe it's my fault I haven't gotten to move forward in the things that I feel like I'm called to because somehow I'm not enough. Maybe if you knew a little more, or maybe if you had a better network, or maybe if you had a little more education, or maybe if you were a little more talented or a little more skilled, or whatever that thing is, maybe if you had a little more, you would have already progressed and you would have already moved on to this next stage of life or this next season of life. And I had to work through that. I had to climb back into the Word. So Jeremiah 29:11 talks about, I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to do you good and not evil. This is the Kimberly paraphrase. Everything is going to work out because God knows the plans for you. But I think the challenge with that verse, for me, was I had to step back and look at what the emphasis is in that verse. Because it's, I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. I kind of take comfort in that verse for me, because that says God's just as organized. Actually, He's more organized than I am. And for all the planning that I do, His plans are so much bigger. What God had waiting for me was so much bigger than I could have imagined. As I stepped into the new opportunity, I was able to transition in the right way. I was able to transition in a godly way, a way that I feel was pleasing to Him. I didn't burn any bridges in my transition. I didn't go with a feeling of unease or unrest about it. I went confident that this was simply the new season. We forget that while we're focused on the plan that God has for us, there are plans that God has for everybody else around the situation at the same time. And he has to get all of those pieces in the proper alignment to then place you in the middle of it. As I stepped into the new opportunity, still not even really knowing all that it was going to involve, I have had the time of my life. As I look back, everything that I went through to reach this new opportunity prepared me for exactly where I'm at. I learned things that I needed for where I'm at, that had I not stayed in that earlier season, I would not be able to be successful where I'm at now and in what I'm doing now. So as I look back, I always thought I was destined to be a full-time pastor. I was going to be on staff, be at the church, out serving and teaching and speaking in a pastoral role on a full-time basis. I had no idea what God was drawing me to and where he was going to take me with this, and that he had a place for me and for that heart of a teacher, that heart of a speaker that he did put in me to be used in the marketplace. I think it's important for us to look at the characteristics of the call and let God work out the particulars, because I would have never foresaw myself in the role that I'm in career-wise. But God's opened up an opportunity where I'm speaking, I'm teaching, I'm having influence all across our state, and even in some of the things I'm doing that's extending across our nation. And I never imagined it would come in the secular marketplace. I think God puts a characteristic of the calling within us. And he wants us to look for the opportunities and the ways to have that calling mentored and to learn and to grow in the characteristics of that calling. But then we have to step back and let God open the door for us to walk into each season of the way that calling is going to be used. If I were to speak to somebody directly that were to ask me, well, why isn't God answering my prayers? I would tell them that he is. I would say that God is I'd say that God is continually answering our prayer, because he answers it sometimes in incremental steps, because he knows there are some seasons and some things that we ask him for, that we're seeking him for, and he's going to take us from point A to point Z and just take us. But there are some things that he needs us to walk through A and B and C. But if we just hold on, we're going to reach that point where all of a sudden all these pieces come together, and it's bigger and it's more beautiful, and it's so far beyond what we ever imagined it could be. But we have to wait to get there, and we can't give up in the waiting.